Discover 5 revelations from God, quietly transforming your life, the whisper of the invisible. There is a mystery in the way God moves that often escapes our eyes, because we are conditioned to look for signs in the loud, the extraordinary, the miraculous that splits the sky. Yet the truth is that most of God's greatest works begin with whispers. Whispers that do not make headlines, that do not rattle the earth, but that shape destinies with quiet precision.
When God chose to speak to Elijah on the mountain, he was not in the wind, nor in the earthquake, nor in the fire. He was in the gentle whisper, the soft voice that carried more power than thunder. And this same whisper is still speaking into our lives today, moving beneath the surface where no one else can see, transforming us in ways we only recognize later. You may wonder why life feels ordinary, why your prayers seem to hang in the air without an answer, why nothing appears to shift no matter how much faith you muster. The whisper of the invisible is the explanation. God is not absent. He is present in ways your senses cannot yet detect. Just as the roots of a tree work tirelessly underground, unseen by the human eye, God is strengthening the foundation of your soul. You look at the branches and think nothing has changed, but beneath, deep in the soil of your life, He is anchoring you for storms that have not yet arrived, preparing you for fruit that will nourish not only you, but also those who will depend on you. The invisible work of God is often the most essential. Think of the process of a child being formed in the womb.
No one sees the heart when it first begins to beat. No one hears the cells multiplying. Yet there is life being created in silence, protected from outside eyes until the right time of birth. That is how God moves in you. In moments when nothing seems to develop, when silence feels heavy, when prayers appear unanswered, He is knitting together the unseen details of your destiny. What feels like delay is design. What feels like stillness is sacred movement. The reason this work remains invisible is because it must be. If you saw every detail of how God was shaping you, your heart might resist, your fear might interfere, your impatience might attempt to accelerate the process. But God guards His work in silence, so it can grow free of your control. His whisper cannot be manipulated. It cannot be rushed. It can only be received. You are not meant to understand it in the moment. You are meant to trust it until the day comes when His hidden work bursts into visible life. This whisper is not only in circumstances, it is also in your spirit. Have you ever felt a quiet pull in your heart, a sudden peace when logic screamed otherwise, or a soft unease when everything looked right on the surface? These are the whispers of God guiding you. They are not loud commands. They are not flashing signs. They are subtle movements within your soul that you only recognize if you learn to listen. And listening requires stillness, sensitivity, and faith. The world shouts, but God often chooses to whisper because He is not competing for your attention. He is inviting you into intimacy. The invisible does not mean insignificant. In fact, the invisible is often the most significant. The greatest victories of your life will not begin in the public eye. They will begin in the quiet moments when you chose to trust God without evidence. They will begin in your prayers when no one was watching, in your tears shed alone, in your perseverance when nothing seemed to shift. These moments build a foundation so unshakable that when God finally unveils His work, no storm, no critic, no failure can destroy it. So if today you feel like heaven is silent, do not be deceived.
The silence is not the absence of God. It is the presence of His whisper. It is the sound of Him weaving details you cannot comprehend, aligning people you have not yet met, preparing opportunities you cannot yet see. One day, you will look back and realize that the moments you thought were empty were the very moments pregnant with promise. The whisper of the invisible was carrying you, teaching you, and transforming you without you even knowing it. And when the time comes, what was hidden will be revealed, and you will stand in awe not only of the outcome, but of the God who works powerfully in silence. The unexpected delay. Delays are some of the most misunderstood moments in the spiritual journey. We live in a culture that values speed, instant results and immediate answers. But God does not conform to human schedules. His timing is perfect, but it is rarely predictable. What we interpret as a setback is often His way of protecting us from paths that are not aligned with His purpose. The unexpected delay is not the denial of a promise. It is the shield that keeps us safe from stepping into something before we are ready, or before the right conditions are in place. Think about Joseph in Egypt. He received visions of greatness as a teenager, yet his path to that throne led through betrayal, slavery, and prison. Every step seemed to delay the fulfillment of what God had shown him. Yet, in truth, each delay was positioning him closer to destiny. Had Joseph rushed into power without the wisdom that suffering carved into his character, he would not have had the maturity to lead a nation. God uses delay to refine us, to strip away illusions, to deepen our roots so that when the doors finally open, we are not destroyed by the very blessings we once prayed for.
Many times, you have cried out wondering why the answer did not come when you expected it. You may have even doubted whether God heard you at all. But the silence in those waiting rooms of life was not indifference. It was preparation. It was heaven rearranging pieces on a board you could not see, aligning circumstances beyond your reach, and developing patience in your heart so that you could receive the promise fully when the time came. The delay was not about punishment. It was about protection, because premature blessings can become unbearable burdens. There is also a hidden mercy in delay. Sometimes what you are asking for is good, but the timing is dangerous. A relationship, an opportunity, a dream can be poisoned if it comes too early. Like fruit picked before its season, it looks appealing but lacks sweetness and nourishment. God delays so that what He gives you will not harm you. He waits until the fruit is ripe, until your hands are ready to carry it, until your heart is strong enough to treasure it. Delay is the furnace where both the gift and the receiver are perfected. When you learn to see delays as divine strategy, peace begins to replace frustration. Instead of asking, "Why not now?" you begin to ask, "What are you teaching me in this?" Waiting becomes an act of worship, a declaration of trust that God's plan is better than your impatience. Each day of delay is not wasted time. It is invested time. It is God filling the gaps, smoothing the road, softening your spirit, and strengthening your faith. So the next time you face an unexpected delay, resist the temptation to despair. Instead, lean in and recognize that heaven is still active. God is not late, He is not absent, He is deliberate. And the very moment that feels like your greatest setback may be the scene where He is writing your greatest deliverance. Trust that the clock of eternity does not miss a second. When the appointed time arrives, what was delayed will not only come to pass, it will arrive with greater impact than you imagined. The silent exchange. There are times when you feel a heaviness pressing on your soul, and you cannot explain where it comes from. The battles of daily life wear you down, burdens pile one on top of another, and before long you feel as though you are carrying more than you can bear. Yet in these very moments, something unseen is happening. God is quietly taking what you cannot carry and placing in you what you did not even know you needed. This is the silent exchange, the mysterious work of His Spirit that trades weakness for strength, sorrow for hope, and fear for courage. It is not loud, it is not dramatic, and most of the time you will only notice it after the weight has already lifted and your spirit feels new again. The cross itself is the ultimate picture of this silent exchange. Jesus took upon Himself the burden of sin and offered in return forgiveness and eternal life. No one in that moment understood the magnitude of what was happening. The disciples thought it was defeat. The world thought it was just another execution. But heaven was orchestrating the greatest exchange in history. That same principle still works in your life today. Every time you release your pain to God in prayer, every time you whisper your worries to Him in the quiet of the night, He is performing an unseen transaction. What you hand over in weakness, He transforms into a deposit of grace. This is why the Scripture says to cast your cares upon Him because He cares for you. Casting is not a gentle act. It means to throw, to hurl, to place the full weight of what is crushing you into his hands. When you do this, you are not left empty.
God does not just take away, he replaces. He places strength where there was fragility, peace where there was anxiety, and joy where there was despair. And this replacement does not announce itself with fanfare. You simply wake up one morning and realize the fear that once ruled your heart has loosened its grip. The grief that once suffocated you has given way to a new calm. The burdens you thought would break you have somehow become lighter, though your circumstances may not have changed at all. The silent exchange often happens in prayer, but it also occurs in the ordinary rhythm of life. Sometimes you are not even aware of it. You think you have no more energy to continue, yet you find yourself still moving forward. You thought you could not endure another day, yet somehow you did. That is not coincidence. It is divine exchange. God was depositing his endurance in you when your strength ran out. He was sustaining you when you had nothing left to give. This exchange is not only about survival, it is about transformation. Every time God takes something heavy from you and replaces it with his strength, he is shaping your character. He is teaching you to depend less on your own ability and more on his presence. He is showing you that you are not meant to live life carrying everything alone. The silent exchange makes you humble enough to acknowledge your limits, yet confident enough to walk with courage, because you know you are never walking in your own power. So when you feel overwhelmed, do not be afraid to surrender. Speak to God honestly. Tell him where it hurts, where it feels too heavy, where it seems too much. You may not feel the change instantly, but the silent exchange has already begun. As you release, he receives. As you let go, he takes hold. And while you cannot see it, he is turning every sigh into strength, every tear into testimony, every weakness into a doorway for his power to flow. One day you will look back and realize that the reason you made it through was not because you carried everything, but because God carried you. That is the power of the silent exchange, and it is happening even now in the unseen corners of your life. The shaping of desires.
Deep inside every person lives a collection of desires. Some are pure, some are selfish, some are born from wounds, and others from hope. At first glance, we think our desires are simply our own, the natural product of who we are and what we want. But when you walk with God, something profound begins to happen. He starts shaping those desires, molding them like clay in the potter's hands. You may begin with ambitions that are entirely yours, yet over time you discover that what you long for has been subtly transformed. God does not force you into his will. He patiently reshapes your heart so that you begin to want what he wants for you. This is one of the most powerful revelations of faith, because it shows that his plan is not only imposed on your life, but woven into your very soul. This shaping is rarely obvious. Often it takes the form of dissatisfaction. What once excited you no longer feels fulfilling. What you chased no longer satisfies. You feel restless, almost guilty for losing interest in things that once consumed you. But this restlessness is not failure. It is formation. It is God whispering that you were made for more than the temporary goals that once held your heart. He loosens your grip on what is shallow so that your hands are free to grasp what is eternal. The shift is not about losing passion. It is about redirecting passion toward what carries true meaning. Sometimes the shaping of desires comes through disappointment. You pray for something, you fight for it, you pursue it with all your strength, and yet it slips through your fingers. At first you think God has ignored you, but in time you realize he spared you. He refused to let your heart be bound to something that would eventually harm you or keep you small. Like a parent who does not give a child candy before dinner, God sometimes withholds what you think you want because he knows it will spoil the appetite of your soul for what truly matters. And slowly, through that disappointment, your desires begin to shift. You start craving depth instead of surface, truth instead of illusion, and purpose instead of pleasure. There are also seasons when God places entirely new desires within you, desires you never imagined.
A calling to serve, to create, to build, to love in ways that were not part of your natural personality. You look back and ask yourself, where did this come from? The answer is simple. It came from Him. Scripture tells us that God works in us to will and to act in order to fulfill His good purpose. That means He not only gives you the ability to act, He plants the desire itself. What feels like your idea may very well be His seed growing in your heart. The beauty of this shaping is that it transforms obedience into joy. You no longer serve God out of duty alone. You serve Him because your deepest longings now align with His will. What once felt like sacrifice begins to feel like fulfillment. The very things you thought you would never want become the very things that give your life meaning. You realize that God's commands are not chains to restrict you, but a pathway to desires that lead to life. This process takes time, and it can be painful because it involves letting go of what you thought defined you. But every desire that falls away makes room for one that is richer, deeper, and more aligned with eternity. God is not destroying your individuality. He is refining it. He is not erasing your passions. He is purifying them. The shaping of desires is the evidence that you are being transformed from the inside out. So if you find yourself wanting new things, hungering for deeper purpose, or losing interest in pursuits that once defined you, do not fear. You are not losing yourself. You are becoming who you were always meant to be. God is shaping your desires to reflect His heart, so that when you finally step into your destiny, it will not feel like a burden, but like home. And that alignment between your heart and His will is one of the clearest signs that He is quietly transforming your life. The restlessness of the soul.
There comes a moment when everything around you looks fine on the surface, yet inside your heart, something does not settle. You have the job, the relationships, the stability you once asked for, but there is a quiet unease, a restlessness you cannot explain. Many mistake this feeling as dissatisfaction or even as failure, but in reality it is often the voice of God stirring your soul. Restlessness is one of His instruments, a divine nudge that tells you the season is shifting. It is as if heaven is whispering, "Do not get too comfortable here, because I am moving you forward to something greater." If life were only comfort, you would never grow. Comfort breeds stagnation, but restlessness ignites transformation. It pushes you out of circles where you no longer belong, away from habits that no longer serve you, beyond roles that no longer fit your purpose. Think of Abraham. He lived in security, surrounded by family and culture. Yet God placed in his heart a restlessness that called him into the unknown. Without that holy disquiet, he would have never stepped into the promise of becoming the father of nations. That is how God works. He disturbs the settled waters of your life to prepare you for a new horizon. This inner unease can be confusing because everything external seems fine. You may ask yourself why you are not content when nothing is wrong. But restlessness is rarely about what is wrong. It is about what is unfinished. God uses it to break the illusion that your current situation is the final chapter. He allows you to feel unsettled so that you will not cling to what is temporary. If He let you stay fully comfortable, you might miss the call to step into a new assignment, a deeper intimacy with Him, or a greater purpose that is waiting just ahead. Do not mistake this restlessness as a lack of gratitude. You can be grateful and still sense God stirring you for more. Gratitude honors the blessings you already have, while restlessness points toward the blessings not yet revealed. One does not cancel the other. In fact, they work together. Gratitude keeps your heart humble, while restlessness keeps your spirit moving. The tension between the two is what propels you forward without forgetting where you came from. Restlessness also exposes attachments. When God begins to unsettle your spirit, you discover the things you hold on to too tightly. Relationships, positions, possessions, all of them are tested in the furnace of divine disquiet. What you thought you could not live without begins to feel less secure, less satisfying. This is God gently loosening your grip, not to leave you empty, but to free your hands for what He is about to place there. The more you resist, the more restless you feel, because He will not allow you to settle for less than what He designed you for. The restlessness of the soul is therefore not a curse, but a compass. It points you toward places you would never go on your own. It reminds you that your true home is not in comfort but in calling. Every time you feel that quiet stirring inside, recognize it as God preparing you for movement. He is aligning your steps with a bigger plan, urging you out of the familiar and into the unknown, where His power can be revealed in new ways. So if your soul feels restless today, do not ignore it and do not despise it. Pay attention. Ask God what He is shifting in your life. Listen closely to the unease that does not go away. That very discomfort may be the doorway to the next chapter of your destiny. And when you respond, when you choose to follow the gentle disturbance rather than cling to comfort, you will discover that what you thought was frustration was in fact invitation. The restlessness of the soul is heaven's way of reminding you that you were created for more. The hidden encounters. Life often feels like a series of chance meetings, casual introductions, and ordinary interactions.
A stranger at a bus stop, a colleague in the office, a neighbor you greet in passing, all seem unremarkable. Yet, what if these encounters are not accidents at all? What if they are divine appointments, moments quietly orchestrated by God to move your story forward? Hidden encounters are the subtle intersections where heaven touches earth, where God places the right person in the right place at the right time, often without you realizing their significance until much later. Think of Ruth meeting Boaz in the fields. On the surface, it was a simple act of survival, a young widow gleaning grain to feed her family. But behind that ordinary scene, God had scripted an encounter that would change history. Through that meeting, Ruth would become part of the lineage that led to David and eventually to Christ Himself. That one encounter, which looked like chance, was in fact a hinge of destiny. And the same principle is at work in your life. What looks random may be intentional. The people you meet, the conversations you have, the connections you form. God may be aligning them as part of His greater plan for you. Hidden encounters often come disguised in simplicity. A teacher who believes in you when no one else does. A friend who invites you to a place where your life is transformed. A mentor who gives you advice at just the right time. These are not coincidences. They are divine threads woven into the fabric of your journey. And the remarkable thing is that you rarely recognize their significance in the moment. Only later, when you look back, do you see that God's fingerprints were all over the encounter. Sometimes hidden encounters are not about who comes into your life, but about who leaves. The absence of certain people can be just as purposeful as the arrival of others. God removes voices that would distract you and clears space for those who will guide you toward His will. Painful as it may be, these exits are also part of His choreography. The silence left behind is not empty. It is room for the right person to step in. This truth calls for attentiveness. If you see life only as a series of coincidences, you will miss the divine fingerprints on your story. But when you begin to live with the awareness that God works through people, even in the simplest interactions, you approach every moment with reverence. You listen more carefully. You observe more deeply.
You treat others with greater love, because you never know when a hidden encounter is carrying the seed of your breakthrough. It is also a reminder of responsibility. Just as others may be divine appointments for you, you may be a divine appointment for someone else. Your words, your kindness, your presence may be the answer to a prayer you did not even know was prayed. God does not only bring hidden encounters into your life, He also uses you as a hidden encounter in the life of someone else. Every time you show compassion, every time you offer encouragement, every time you choose to be faithful, you may be the very vessel through which God quietly transforms another person's path. So do not despise small meetings, ordinary conversations, or unexpected interruptions. They may be carrying eternal weight. The friend you meet today may be the one who helps you unlock tomorrow's purpose. The colleague you overlook may be the very person God uses to open a door. And when you live with that awareness, you begin to see that life is not random. It is a tapestry woven with hidden encounters that carry the fingerprints of God. Pay attention, because the next person you meet might not be there by chance. The shield of closed doors. There are moments in life when you stand before a door you desperately want to open, but no matter how much you push, it stays shut. You pray, you plan, you strive, yet the opportunity does not come. The relationship does not blossom. The dream does not unfold the way you imagined. At first it feels cruel. You wonder if God has forgotten you, if perhaps your faith is not strong enough, or if your prayers have gone unheard. But often what feels like rejection is in fact protection. A closed door is not God's way of punishing you. It is His shield, keeping you from paths that would wound your soul or derail your destiny. We are limited in vision. We see only the moment in front of us, but God sees the end from the beginning. He knows the dangers hidden behind doors that look appealing, and in His mercy, He closes them. Imagine walking down a road that looks beautiful, lined with flowers and light, only to discover further ahead it leads to a cliff. Would you not thank the one who stopped you before you fell? That is what God does when He allows certain doors to remain locked. He spares you from harm you could not predict, even though at the time it feels like loss. Closed doors also test our trust. When we do not understand why the job did not come through, why the relationship ended, why the project failed, we face the question, do we trust God's character more than our own plans? Faith is not only about believing for open doors, it is about believing that even the closed ones are part of His wisdom. True trust is learning to rest in the knowledge that if He withheld it, it was never meant to bless you. What God has for you will not require forcing open a door that He Himself has sealed. There is another hidden blessing in closed doors. They redirect us. When Paul and his companions tried to preach the gospel in Asia, the Spirit of Jesus prevented them. To human eyes, it looked like a barrier, but it was actually divine direction. Instead of Asia, Paul was led to Macedonia, where new doors opened for the message to spread. What looked like denial was guidance. God was saying, "Not here, not now, because there is something better waiting just ahead." Closed doors do not mean no purpose. They mean new direction. Sometimes closed doors even reveal the idols of our hearts. We do not realize how tightly we cling to certain dreams until they are denied. In that moment of loss, God shows us where our hope truly lies. If our faith collapses when the door shuts, it may be that we trusted more in the opportunity than in the one who opens and closes all doors. In His kindness, God allows these moments not to break us, but to free us, teaching us that our ultimate security is not in access, but in Him. When you begin to see closed doors as shields, peace replaces frustration. Instead of fighting what will not open, you begin to look around and ask, where is God redirecting me? What is He protecting me from? What greater plan might be unfolding that I cannot yet see? Closed doors then become reminders of His love, not evidence of His absence. So if you are facing a door that refuses to open, resist despair. It may very well be God's way of saving you from a path that would have harmed you. Thank Him for the shield you cannot understand yet.
Trust that when the right door comes, it will not only open, it will swing wide without striving. Because the same God who closes with purpose will open with perfect timing. And when that moment comes, you will realize that every closed door was part of the map leading you safely to your destiny. The healing we don't see. There are wounds that leave no visible scar, pain so deeply buried in the soul that even those closest to you cannot recognize them. Disappointments, betrayals, losses, silent traumas, all of them carve spaces inside your heart where brokenness hides. You may smile on the outside while inside you are still carrying fragments of past battles. Yet even here, in the secret places of your soul, God is at work. The healing we don't see is one of the most tender demonstrations of His love, because He mends what no one else can touch and restores what you do not even know is broken. Healing often begins long before you recognize it. One day you wake up and realize that the memory which once made you weep now feels lighter. The bitterness that once consumed you has softened into forgiveness. The fear that once paralyzed you no longer has the same grip. You did not notice the exact moment it happened, but somewhere along the way, God touched your wound with his unseen hand. Just as a cut heals beneath the bandage long before you see new skin form, so your soul begins to repair itself under the covering of his presence. We often imagine healing as instant and dramatic, like a sudden miracle that wipes away pain in a moment. And yes, God can do that. But more often, his healing is gradual, quiet, and invisible. It takes place in conversations that give you peace, in prayers whispered through tears, in scriptures that suddenly shine with new meaning. It takes place in moments when you thought you were only surviving, but God was actually restoring you piece by piece. You may not see the process, but you will eventually see the result. A heart that beats freer, a soul that breathes lighter, a spirit that learns to hope again. The hidden nature of this healing is also protection. Sometimes, if you saw the process, you might interfere, reopening wounds or doubting the pace. So God works where you cannot see, keeping the repair safe from your impatience.
Just as a surgeon closes the incision and allows the body to heal within, God seals the deepest places of your soul and quietly knits together what was torn apart. And while you may grow restless, waiting for complete restoration, he is guarding the process so that when healing is revealed, it is strong, lasting, and whole. There are times when you mistake this healing for nothing happening. You cry, you pray, and still feel the ache, and you think God has done nothing. But pain remaining does not mean healing is absent. It means the work is ongoing. Even in medicine, a wound may hurt while it heals. Pain can be part of progress. Do not confuse God's silence with inactivity. Behind the silence, he is applying the balm of his spirit, drawing out the poison of resentment, closing the open spaces of grief, and breathing new life into weary places. The healing we don't see also reshapes us. Through the process, you learn empathy for others who are broken. You gain strength to endure storms without collapsing. You become a testimony that scars can shine, not as marks of shame, but as proof of survival. Every healed place becomes a story that carries hope for someone else still bleeding. The very wounds you thought would define your end become the instruments through which God reveals his glory. So, if today you feel broken in places no one can see, take heart. God sees. And he is not ignoring those wounds. He is already at work, mending silently, carefully, patiently. Trust the process you cannot monitor. Believe that healing is happening, even if you cannot measure it. One day you will realize that the wound that once defined your nights of tears has lost its power. The weight you thought you would carry forever has been lifted. And in that moment you will understand that the healing you didn't see was the most powerful of all, because it was God's hand, unseen yet undeniable, writing restoration into your soul. The transformation in the shadows. Transformation rarely begins in the spotlight. The most profound changes in your life often take place in the hidden corners where no one is watching. Just as seeds break open beneath the soil, unseen by human eyes, God works in the shadows of your existence, reshaping your heart, your mind, and your future. We live in a world obsessed with visible results, quick achievements, and public recognition. But heaven does not operate by those standards. God values the hidden process more than the instant outcome. He knows that what is formed in the shadows will endure in the light. Think of Moses in the desert. Before he ever stood before Pharaoh to declare freedom, he spent 40 years in obscurity, tending sheep. To many that looked like wasted time, but in truth it was holy preparation. In the shadows of the wilderness, God was transforming him from a fugitive into a leader, from a man of impulse into a man of patience, from a broken soul into a chosen vessel. What looked like silence was in fact the sculpting of destiny, and the same is true for you. Seasons of obscurity are not abandonment. They are classrooms where God shapes your character. In the shadows, God breaks habits that could destroy you, heals wounds that could cripple you, and instills disciplines that will sustain you. These changes are not glamorous, but they are essential. No one applauds you when you choose forgiveness instead of bitterness, when you wake up early to pray while the world sleeps, when you resist temptations in private. Yet these unseen victories are the building blocks of visible success. By the time others see the fruit, the root system has already been strengthened in the dark. The transformation in the shadows is also protection. If everything about your process were exposed too soon, critics could crush it, envy could poison it, and your own pride could distort it. So God keeps you hidden while He works, allowing your gifts to mature and your soul to stabilize.
This is why you should not despise seasons where nothing seems to happen. What feels like stagnation may actually be preservation. God hides you because what He is building in you cannot be rushed. It is in these shadowed places that intimacy with God deepens. Without the noise of applause or the distractions of recognition, you learn to hear His voice clearly. You discover that your worth is not tied to how many see you, but to the one who knows you completely. Shadows strip away illusions, forcing you to anchor your identity not in visibility, but in presence. And when your confidence is rooted there, no spotlight can inflate you, and no criticism can crush you. Transformation in the shadows may feel lonely, but it is never wasted. Every hidden lesson, every private struggle, every unseen victory prepares you for the day when God decides to bring you into the open. And when that day comes, what you display will not be shallow performance but deep authenticity. People will see the strength, but they will not realize the countless nights of prayer that built it. They will admire the wisdom, but they will not know the tears that watered it. They will celebrate the fruit, but you will know it was the shadow that nurtured the root. So if you find yourself in a season where no one notices your effort, do not despair. You are not forgotten. You are being transformed in the shadows, sculpted for something greater. Trust the quiet work. Honor the hidden process. Because one day the light will shine, and when it does, it will reveal not just what you have become, but what God has been crafting in you all along. And that revelation will carry a weight and authenticity that only shadows could have produced. The alignment of circumstances. There are seasons in life when events that seem random begin to connect in ways you could never have designed. A delayed bus, a canceled meeting, a sudden conversation, an unexpected opportunity. All of it feels coincidental at first. But then, looking back, you realize that every detail was part of a larger picture. This is the alignment of circumstances, the quiet orchestration of God-moving pieces you did not even know were on the board.
What feels like chance in the moment often turns out to be divine strategy in disguise. God's sovereignty means He is not only present in the extraordinary, but also in the ordinary. He can use traffic jams to protect you from unseen danger, rejections to redirect you to better opportunities, and even disappointments to make space for greater blessings. The story of Esther is a perfect example. She was born at the right time, placed in the palace at the right moment, and given favor with the king precisely when her people needed deliverance. None of it was coincidence. Every detail aligned so that one woman's courage could alter the destiny of a nation. That is how God works. He is the master weaver, intertwining threads you thought were disconnected into a tapestry of purpose. When you are in the middle of the process, the alignment is often invisible. You may see only fragments, and those fragments can feel confusing. A closed door here, a sudden meeting there, a season of waiting that seems endless. But with God, nothing is wasted. Every fragment carries meaning, every delay has intention, every shift is part of a greater story. What looks chaotic to you is ordered in His hands. The alignment of circumstances also teaches humility. We realize that our lives are not driven only by our own effort, but by God's providence. Yes, you work, you plan, you strive. But at the end of the day, it is His orchestration that opens the right doors and places you in the right rooms. This understanding removes pride and replaces it with gratitude. You begin to see that success is not just achievement but grace. That the people you meet, the opportunities that come, the moments that shift everything. None of it happened apart from his careful alignment. This truth should also reshape the way you view interruptions. What feels like an inconvenience might actually be divine redirection. A conversation you did not plan could carry the very word you needed. A path you never intended to take could lead you to the encounter that changes everything. Instead of resenting interruptions, you learn to remain sensitive, asking, "Is God aligning something here that I cannot see yet?" The beauty of God's alignment is that it always works for your good, even when it does not feel good. Romans tells us that all things work together for the good of those who love Him. Not some things, all things. That includes the heartbreak, the delays, the disappointments, the detours. None of them escape His hand. Each one is a puzzle piece, and though you may not understand the picture today, one day you will look back and see how perfectly it all fit together. So walk with trust, even when the path seems uncertain. God is aligning details you cannot control. He is working in conversations you have not had yet, in opportunities that have not opened yet, in doors you do not even know exist. Your responsibility is not to figure out every step, but to stay faithful in each one. The rest belongs to Him. And when the alignment finally reveals itself, you will realize that every circumstance, whether joyful or painful, was a thread in the divine fabric of your destiny. The silence that speaks. There are times in prayer when heaven feels mute. You pour out your heart, but no answer seems to come. You search for signs, but nothing changes. The silence of God can feel like abandonment, yet it is not absence. Silence itself carries a message. It speaks in ways louder than words, shaping your faith, stretching your trust, and teaching your soul to rely not on what it hears, but on what it believes. God's silence is not neglect. It is intentional communication. It is His way of saying, "Trust me, even when I do not explain myself." When Jesus stood before Pilate, He chose silence over defense. He did not argue, He did not justify, He did not resist. That silence was not weakness, but strength. It declared more than words could, that He was in control, that He did not need to prove Himself, that the Father's plan was unfolding regardless of appearances. In the same way, when God is silent in your life, it is not because He is powerless, but because His plan is already in motion. His silence speaks of sovereignty, of assurance, of certainty that He does not need to justify Himself to prove that He is working. Silence also creates space for your faith to mature. If every prayer were answered instantly, you would never learn to trust. You would treat God like a vending machine, not a father. But when answers delay, when silence lingers, you are invited into deeper faith. Faith that believes without evidence. Faith that clings when feelings fade.
Faith that declares, "Even if I hear nothing, I know you are here." That kind of faith cannot be shaken, because it is not built on constant reassurance but on unwavering confidence in God's character. The silence of God also draws you into intimacy. Words are important, but silence is where true closeness is revealed. Think of two people deeply connected. They do not need to fill every moment with speech, because their presence is enough. In the same way, God sometimes withholds words so that you learn to rest in His presence without needing constant confirmation. Silence strips away distractions, forcing you to lean on the certainty that He is near, even when He says nothing. It is in silence that you learn patience, and patience refines your soul. Waiting without answers purifies motives, exposing whether you seek God for His gifts or for Himself. Silence tests your heart. Will you remain faithful even when you cannot trace His hand? Will you continue to pray, to worship, to serve, when you hear nothing in return? The silence that speaks reveals whether your devotion is conditional or unconditional. Often silence is not the absence of an answer, but the answer itself. When heaven is quiet, it may be God's way of saying, "Stay where you are. Keep walking. Nothing needs to change right now." His silence can be confirmation that you are already on the right path. Just as a teacher is silent during the test, God's silence may indicate that you already have the instruction you need and must now apply it. So do not despise the seasons when God is silent. Lean in, listen deeper, and recognize that His silence carries meaning. It speaks of trust, of maturity, of intimacy. It is an invitation to believe without proof, to hold on without signs, to love Him for who He is and not just for what He does. One day, when the silence breaks and His voice returns, you will understand that He was never absent. The silence was His way of shaping you into someone who can stand unshaken, who can walk with faith even in the dark. The silence that speaks is not emptiness. It is the language of heaven, teaching you that God's presence is enough even when His voice is still. The revelation of the journey.
At some point, you will look back and see that your life was never random. Every delay, every whisper, every closed door, every hidden encounter was part of a design more intricate than you could ever imagine. The revelation of the journey does not come in the middle of the process when confusion is loud and answers are scarce. It comes when you stand far enough ahead to recognize how every step was connected, how every season carried meaning, and how even your deepest wounds were transformed into testimonies of grace. The beauty of God's work is that He does not waste anything. The tears you thought were lost watered the soil of your faith. The silence you feared was abandonment became the ground where trust was planted. The struggles that broke you became the chisels that shaped your character. The hidden moments of obedience, the choices no one applauded, the sacrifices no one saw, these became the foundation stones of the life God was building in you. What looked ordinary was extraordinary in His hands. What looked like loss was preparation for greater gain. The revelation of the journey also reshapes how you see yourself. You no longer define your life by the mistakes, the failures, or the waiting. Instead, you begin to see yourself through God's perspective. You are not just someone who survived. You are someone who was guided, protected, healed, and transformed at every step. Even the moments when you resisted, when you doubted, when you wanted to give up, He carried you forward. His grace did not depend on your perfection. It depended on His unshakable commitment to complete the work He began in you. When this revelation settles in your heart, peace replaces striving. You stop asking why with frustration and begin to ask why with wonder. Why would God love me so faithfully? Why would He work so patiently in my story? Why would He choose to weave my broken pieces into a tapestry of hope? These questions do not lead to despair, but to worship. They make you lift your eyes and realize that your life is evidence of His goodness, a testimony that others can see and be drawn to. The journey is not finished. As long as you have breath, God is still writing, still aligning, still transforming. But the revelation of what He has already done gives you courage to face what lies ahead. If He was faithful in the shadows, He will be faithful in the light. If He guided you through silence, He will guide you through storms. If He turned pain into purpose before, He will do it again. The journey itself becomes the revelation that you are never alone, never abandoned, never without hope, because God has been, is, and will always be at work. So stand where you are today and look back, not with regret but with gratitude. Every chapter has mattered. Every struggle has counted. Every unseen moment has carried eternal weight. The revelation of the journey is that God has been transforming you all along, not just through the victories but through the valleys, not just through the answers but through the silence, not just through what was given but through what was withheld. And now you see it. Your story is not a story of coincidence. It is a story of divine orchestration, a living testimony that God's hand has been on you from the beginning and will remain until the end.